but help us welcome back Eric Christopher.
Oh, thank you, Jay, for that lovely welcoming. And it's such an honor and pleasure to be here today to speak on this month's theme on choosing simplicity. And it's, like I mentioned before, it's an honor and pleasure to be here. This is such a vibrant spiritual community, and I have so many clients that are new on the spiritual path, so I always nudge them in this direction. Because I always think of Paramahansa Yogananda's words. He says, when you're new on the spiritual path, there's one thing more important than willpower, and that is your environment. Because when we're new on the spiritual path, it's nice to be able to have a community that can support your thoughts and ideas that mainstream might think is outside the box. Yet it's important to have a community that can help you awaken to your own true and authentic self. So today I'm going to speak a little bit for maybe 20 minutes, a half an hour, but I'm going to spend time with you to guide you on an inner journey for about the last 15 or 20 minutes. A guided journey to connect to your higher self and of source energy. Why can you and how can you connect to your higher self and source energy? Well, it's because you can't even separate yourself from your higher self and your source energy. It's who and what you are. That's probably the one thing that you can't do. One day you won't be your body, but try as you might, you cannot separate yourself from the light, energy, and consciousness that's animating your body. And you can't separate yourself from source energy either. So that's why we can do a guided journey to connect with that which you already are. The guided journey just helps this analytical left brain mind accept it a little bit easier. So choosing simplicity and spiritual awakening go hand in hand in this human experience. And it's because almost every spiritual teacher that has had a full awakening experience, and by the way, there's plenty out there these days, Adyashanti, Leonard Jacobson, many, many others, what they'll say is that enlightenment is ridiculously simple and easy. It just gets overlooked in each and every moment in this human experience. We're conditioned to overlook it. And it reminds me of one of those magic eye pictures where you can look and see those pictures and it looks just like a bunch of colors, but then if you relax your gaze and focus, all of a sudden out pops a 3D image of like a butterfly or a clown with a balloon or something like that. But spiritually awakening, what helps is not relaxing your eyes, but relaxing your mind. So here's an example. We go through our whole lives identified as these bodies. And it's true. We have separate bodies, separate personalities, separate names. That's true. But what might be truer than that relatively is that we're the light, energy, and consciousness that animates these bodies. And ultimately, all energy goes back to the same one energy source. Evidence of that is a lot of evidence of that. In fact, there's this lawyer in Australia that wrote this book called The Lawyer Presents the Evidence of the Afterlife. His name is Victor Zammit, and if you ever Google him, he has a really interesting it's called the Friday Afterlife Report. And it's just full of just different studies from mediums or scientists that are trying to prove the evidence of the afterlife. He says if you put the evidence of the afterlife in a court of law, it would just win easily and unanimously. Victor Zammit. So now we go through our lives fully identified with these bodies, but as I mentioned before, you can't separate yourself from that source energy of who and what you are. And when you talk about enlightenment, there's no way to do it without being paradoxical. Paradoxical in the sense that there's nothing to gain or add for a full spiritual awakening. It's more of a subtraction process. There's nothing that you need to gain and add. It's simply the timeless boundaryless, borderless presence that you already are. And those that have spiritually awakened, we call that Christ consciousness or Christos consciousness. Christos consciousness, Christ consciousness means oneness consciousness, unity consciousness. And those with unity consciousness would absolutely know that the same energy that's animating them is the same energy that's animating a cat, a tree, any other person. So when they see another person, it's like they don't see them as separate. Yes, they see them as separate, of course, but you see through it. You see the underlying truth beneath that we're actually the same one energy source with billions, trillions of different faces. That would be a spiritually awakening. And why it's a paradox is because, well, as Leonard Jacobson put it, we are on this journey to become that which we already are. Now, for most people, it's so simple and easy, like a perception shift away. But for most of us, it takes a long time to get to that understanding. For me, I started my spiritual journey 30 years ago. And, when most people, and I see this a lot with my clients, the beginning of their spiritual journey can often be, the catalyst could be a death in the family or a death of a loved one or being with someone that dies. Because and I'll share my own experience. I did this before in one of the talk. When I was 24, I was working in India. I decided to backpack around India, and I was working for the Mother Teresa Home for the Destitute and Dying, and I wasn't sure what to do when I first got there, but someone said, well, go over to sit with that man. He's dying. So I decided to sit with him. And I decided to do what I was told and sit with him, and he started talking to me in a local dialect. I told him I couldn't understand. He said it didn't really matter to him that I couldn't understand. He was just talking to me, held out my arms, and then he just died. And in that moment, something began to click. His body is this hard shell now. What and where is the light, energy, and consciousness that animates his body? That's who and what we are. Later, we threw his body on a burning pyre. So that quest began, we're more than these bodies. And sometimes it takes that to break out of the hypnotic trance of the human experience that we're only these bodies. It becomes very obvious after a death. And those that have a death of a loved one, many times can get visitations from their loved ones in a dream or in a deep hypnotic trance, as I've experienced with some of my clients. It's because we get the programming and conditioning and the thinking mind out of the way. Our thinking mind creates so many barriers for us to experience the true deep reality. So, healing and awakening to your wholeness is actually a subtraction process, meaning you already are this brilliant, bright, all of us sitting here right now are these brilliant, bright, eternal beings that come from love, that will go back to love. We are love while we're here. We're based in love. But on top of these bright lights, we got this programming and conditioning of this early growing up experience. We get identified with the body. We come into this world and we get conditioned to seek love, safety, security, love outside of ourselves, a sense of self outside of ourselves. But the trick of the human experience is to awaken out of that illusion of separateness and know that actually the source of love is already within yourself. So that when people that have fully awakened, you don't even have to fully awaken. You can know that you are this source of love within yourself. That which the ego is always searching for outside of itself, trying to get love, safety, security, everything, actually you're not separate from it within yourself. And that's just the truth that has been just pointed down through the master teachers over and over and over again. As Thich Nhat Hanh said, we are here to awaken from the illusion of our separateness. And when you do that, it's not as difficult as we think. And this is something that begins as an intellectual concept first, but then later it can drop into the heart, and then later into the gut, where you know it as a experience, as just an inner knowing. And sometimes it can be as easy as just a perception shift, like a channel click. I'll give an example of that. Oh, what was it? A month or two ago, I get a phone call. It's my mom. And my mom says, Eric, can you take me to the eye? You got to take me to the eye doctor. And in my mind, I'm thinking, oh, geez, I got this to do, that to do, this to do. You know, my mind's like so many people are, so full of worries, concerns, things on the to-do list. But I thought, being a good son, because that's part of my programming and conditioning was, okay, make mom happy, otherwise you're in for it. So I said, well, yeah, plus I look at it and I say, okay, I often will decide, what will I be happy when I'm looking over and having a life review of my life, what will I be happy that I did? And, well, yeah, okay, helping mom out. So we go, I take her to the eye doctor, and I'm sitting there in this room full of people, waiting room, and I decided to employ a technique with Adi Shanti. He's an awakened being. He lives in California and talks, but he said, here's something to do when you're bored or you're stressed out. He said, ask this question: what is the truest thing in just this moment? What is the truest thing? So I thought, what's the truest thing? Well, we're all sitting here in this room. But then it was, no, we're these souls having a human experience, and as souls, we all come from the same one energy source. There's a unity. Oh, what does that feel like? What does that feel like to know that we're all like an electrical out, like there can be many electrical outlets, but one's power source. And the electrical outlets can power many, many different things, but there's one source of energy. Well, that's what's really happening here. One consciousness underneath it all, one sense of awareness. But when you sat with that, when I sat with that, all of a sudden it's like you see everyone, and everyone is sitting with their own worries and concerns and things on the to-do list, and I got to get this done, just like I was, until I decided to take that channel switch. Ching. It's just like a television. You know, you can change the station on the channel, and all of a sudden it's tuning in. The antenna is tuning into a different frequency. I think we're by the ocean. So.
I think it might be loose for a bit into the battery pack.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay. I don't know what I did, but, oh, there. Okay. All right. So, where was I now? Okay, so then when you see everyone, that's everyone human being, it just, they're operating on autopilot, which is often just layers upon layers of programming and conditioning. But when you see that from the vantage point of love, you just have all of this love and compassion that starts to overstate. So I was sitting in this waiting room feeling all of this, not only energetically, this wave of energy coming in, and compassion goes with it. When you see every human being, you see them as, man, this is a hard experience. Being alive in this third dimension is very hard because we get identified so much with being this human. And the scary part is the humans die. and the bodies die, and you get disease. The soul doesn't. So it makes you wonder, why? Why is that? In the soul realm, there's no death, there's no decay, there's no need for food. If you study the afterlife, you find this to be the case. And you're not separate from love. The only separation you'd have of love would be your own, if your mindset is so heavy, even after death, you can just put yourself in this cocoon or shell until your guides can convince you to come out of that. But here in that, so we already are that which we're seeking. So there's an automatic compassion for people that are in this human experience. And people with the unity consciousness, Christ consciousness, would have that compassion for everyone. Even somebody that is a criminal. I remember watching this film on Paramahansa Yogananda, and they interviewed him. They didn't interview him, but they interviewed some of his people that followed him, and they said that Yogananda was so special. You could take a criminal, and he wouldn't see that. He would just see them as this brilliant, beautiful soul that they were. And anyone that acts in a cruel manner, they're coming from hurt. They're coming from hurt, always. And if someone is coming in a self-serving manner, they're operating from ignorance. Ignorance that we're, from the law of karma, we're all interconnected. Ignorance that what you put out will come back to you. Ignorance that we're all one. Ignorance also that really that what we're trying to seek on the outside is something that is not only within us, but we are it. And that is the beginning of the spiritual journey, when you can start to get that as a concept. And as I mentioned 30 years ago, it started, it was like a seed that got planted in my mind. And I went to India. I was already in India, and I picked up a book on meditation, of course, and I thought, oh, this is something I need to try and learn. So it's been a spiritual journey. And everyone, the interesting thing is every single person is unique. And the things that really I resonate to, that really feel as though they awaken me, I might share it with a friend and they say, oh, no, I didn't really resonate to that too much, but try this book. And I would read that book and it didn't really connect with it. So everyone is their own unique person and has their own unique journey. I'm reminded of this Rumi quote that I read yesterday on an email. It was someone's signature tagline on the bottom. It said, Rumi said this: when you do things from your soul, you feel a river moving through you, a joy. Well, that was an experience. That was, I could experience that in the waiting room. And it carried on. And I thought, oh my gosh, I'm so glad I came here. So glad I took Mom to the eye doctor, because I never would have had a chance to experience this bliss if I was just at home in my to-do list. Yeah. So everyone is seeking love, connection, but not realizing that we already are the source of it, and we already are that. And when I do a guided journey with you today, I hope to have you have an experience of that, not just an intellectual concept. See if I've, and this is something to know. When we begin the spiritual path and awakening to who and what we already are, what'll happen as a byproduct is what happens is your consciousness raises. When your consciousness raises, the unpleasant thing about that is anything unlike a high level of consciousness is going to bubble to the surface. Any thought of unworthiness, not good enough, is going to get triggered. Why? Because it wants to get triggered because it's already there and it's ripe and ready to be made aware of and released from your body, mind, soul system, because it's not compatible with a higher level of consciousness. You come from love. You come from joy. You are love and joy while you're here, and you'll go back to love and joy. It's just truth. And of course, in this human experience, that truth gets covered up. In this human experience, which is, we're essentially hypnotized to overly identify with these bodies. And it's supposed to be that way because we're setting ourselves up we're challenging ourselves here to be able to kind of be asleep to what we're connected to, asleep to our spirit guides, asleep to asleep to our own grand, incredible. Yes, you had a question? So, like you say, thank you. We are all, our purpose is to awaken to that which we already are. So, to awaken to that unity consciousness. And for some people, some souls are ripe and ready to do that in this lifetime. And some souls, it might take many, many, many lifetimes. And we've been at this for a long time. So, choosing simplicity is like seeing life without the layers of all the programming and conditioning, without all the fears. Choosing simplicity. It doesn't require anything. Like we said, we can do that with a channel switch on moving to a higher frequency. One of the ways to move to a higher frequency is through love and gratitude. Love and gratitude will raise your vibration very high. But just beginning to see when your higher self acknowledges another person's higher self, their divine self knows that it's being acknowledged. And it'll feel good being in your presence. They may not consciously know why, but I did that before. I worked 23 years on a psychiatric unit, and there were times where I just employed that tactic of just seeing everyone as the brilliant divine soul that they really were. And I wouldn't have to say anything, but everything is energy. They could feel that energy. And many times it would diffuse conflictual situation. But if you do that, that's a great experiment to do that when we're with family or in a grocery store. Do that and see how that affects your happiness level. See how that affects your feelings of joy, or even ultimately bliss, the deeper we get into that. We're all unique flavors of the one consciousness. And then everyone and everybody has their own unique personality, their own fears, their own strengths, gifts, interests. There's not one human being that's alike. So we have these beautiful different flavors coming through the one consciousness. Hi, you have a question?
So let's say, I'll speak from, so I have a spiritual awakening to someone's passing.
Yeah.
But yet, I'll revert, maybe not to the place that I was as time goes on, but I go back and forth.
Oh, of course. That's the human experience. You forget it. It's because these brains, these minds, we're so conditioned, these brains to go back. But you just have to remember it again. And guess what happens when you remember it again and again? It's like a bank account. That the more you remember it, it's like you don't beat yourself up for forgetting. You applaud yourself of, oh, you remembered again. Because the more you remember that truth and just apply that truth as a thought and just a feeling, the more it's like a bank account. It gets more and more. So if someone that's first beginning in this awakening process, maybe 10% of the time they remember that. 90% of the time you forget. But then over time it's going to balance out. Maybe 40% of the time you forget. 60% of the time you can remember. But then there comes a point where it tips the scale. And then anytime you're feeling stressed or frustrated, it's like a big red flag alert that says, oh, you forgot who and what you really are. You forgot what's really true in this moment. And then it's like, oh, it can be a reminder to reconnect. Thank you. Here's an interesting, that's why awakening, it's here and now, but Adi Ashanti calls awakening, spiritually enlightenment, is like the greatest sleight of hand card trick. Because it's already here. We're trying to awaken to that which we already are. It's already here and available, but yet we just don't see it because we're so conditioned to identify as separate. We do have these separate bodies, but the game we're playing, in Sanskrit they call it God's Leela. What God's Leela is this life. Can you voluntarily go asleep in this human experience, but then awaken to who and what you really are under the surface? And when that happens, your life changes, other people's lives changes, because as Yogananda said, when you heal yourself, you've done your part in healing the world. Why? Because when you heal yourself, all the programs, the conditioning, not good enough, the anger, whatever that's under the surface, when we go through life unconsciously, we just pass it on to others often. But when you wake up to that, then it's like, oh. So when you awakening is also about awakening to the programs and the conditionings that limit us or hold us back. It's like this. It's like you would awaken that and you see that, oh, that's that body-mind personality. So a person that's fully awakened would say, oh, yeah, they know that they're using this body-mind, but that's not their highest level of consciousness. They know that they're using this, and it can have its programming and conditioning. Oh, unworthy. So an awakened person could have an unworthy thought, but the difference is, oh, it's almost as though you're role-playing. Oh, you're role-playing. This person has an unworthy thought or not good enough. Oh, I don't have to believe that. That's you don't believe it. And so it just rolls right off of you and you reconnect. So that's why it's like a greatest sleight of hand card trick. It's already here and available. But the more we can train our minds to connect more and more with that. And see, the Buddha said our minds create so much of our suffering. We're lost in the world of the mind. Leonard Jacobson is a spiritual teacher, and he said he kind of slices and dices the reality up in two. He says there's the present now moment, the eternal now moment, and then there's the world of the mind, that chatterbox thinking mind. It's based in the past, projects into the future, back and forth, and we get lost in that so much so that we're not able to be fully present with a flower or an animal or a person or a cup of tea. But when, in those moments that we are fully present with that, noticing the flavors of a tea or noticing the flavor, when we're fully present with that, and we are not in our thinking mind, in that moment, you are an awakened being. It's like pure, unfiltered consciousness coming through. Here's an example of this. A woman named Natalie Sudman had a near-death experience. And she worked for the Army Corps of Engineers in Iraq. She wrote a book called Application of Impossible Things. And she went over a roadside bomb, or the vehicle that she was in, and immediately she's in different dimension, higher dimension, and she could see herself still wearing the same bloody, like army fatigues, but all of a sudden she's talking to a whole group of beings, spiritual beings. And she's downloading information about being in the human experience to them. And she talks about the experience of being able to her, she said, I knew in that moment that was the real reality. I knew it. That's the real reality. The human experience that I was having was the dream. This is waking up from that. And she said, had this ability, she just could know every single being there and could tune into them and intimately know everything about them, but at the same time could really experience them as a whole. And she knew the ones that were somehow fully present and the ones that their soul energy was there, but part of their soul energy was somewhere else. Interesting experience. And then when she said, okay, I've got to go back now, went back into the body, and she noticed the body with all the pain, and she noticed that one of her ears was deaf. And her first thought was, wow, cool. I lived the first 20-some years of my life with hearing in both ears. Now I get a chance to experience what life is like with only one ear. That is living without the programming and conditioning. But of course, as she gets back in, it's like, okay, we got to fix this. But it's like living with pure, unfiltered consciousness. And it's available the more you awaken, bit by bit. I'm going to close this section of my talk with this quote. This is a quote by Suzanne Geisman. Has anyone ever heard of Suzanne Geisman? She actually was a high-ranking naval commander who would sit with 4 different presidents of the United States. So she's high-ranking, but she retired and she became an evidence-based medium. What's an evidence-based medium? Well, she'll say, she just, all of a sudden, she knew she had this ability. And I think she said it was ability that she had long ago, but then had to shut that down. But then, when the time was right, it came out again. But an evidence-based medium, how she does it is she'll tell that soul, hey, tell me, there's someone that's trying to communicate to someone here. She said, okay, she's talking to the soul, and she says, tell me something that I would never know, but they would. And so then they can be convinced that I am talking to you. And so she's changed many, many lives, but what she found that she was doing was she was able to channel some high-level beings. And there's a group of souls that they call themselves Sanaya. And you can go to her website, Suzanne Geisman, and sign up for these daily inspirational quotes by Sanaya. And I did that. A client told me about that. And so I did. And they're basically just reminders. They're only a couple of sentences long. But it's very helpful when you're on this spiritual journey to awaken to that which you already are, because all of the quotes are having to do with something like that. And so this,
Eric,
yeah?
find her on our YouTube channel too, because she's spoken here.
Oh, she has.
Yeah.
I know she's come here.
Yeah.
And the next time she comes to the Twin Cities, I'm going to come to see her. I really resonate to her teachings and when she channels Sanaya. Here's an example. And this goes into choosing simplicity, our theme. Sanaya said, the group of souls she's channeling, to surrender your story when the drama gets to be too much, simply slip out of gear, just as you would when driving a car. It is not a deliberate act requiring you to take action. Instead, it's more of a drifting motion in which you experience just simply being. In being, there is no doing. And most important for the human, there is no thinking. But I cannot stop the thoughts, you claim. But you can, if only for a moment. And then do it again. And again. And again. until you remember what peace feels like. You did not create the peaceful state. It has been there all along, in neutral. You are so very loved, and we welcome you home moment by moment by moment by moment. So the human experience is one of forgetfulness, but it's about awakening to that which we already are, and awakening to any of the subtle thoughts, feelings, and beliefs that would limit us or hold us back. So I'm going to now do a guided journey with you so that you can connect to that. And remember, you can connect to that because you already are it. But this guided journey is to satisfy your analytical thinking mind. That can really, so to the degree that you can imagine this is to the degree that you're really going to experience it. So let's close your eyes. This is going to take about just under 15 minutes. And I'm going to play the tone. Get yourself in a comfortable position. Imagine that you place a circle of light around you about an arm's length away. And then on the other side of that light, just get a thought about it. That's good enough. On the other side of that light, you place a curtain, draw a dark curtain on anything outside of that circle of light, just so that anything that might serve as a distraction for the next 15 minutes, let that all fade away to non-existence. For 15 minutes. Anything in work life, home life, things on the to-do list, you can pick it all up again later afterwards. But for the next 15 minutes, only focus on my words and on that which is on the inside of this circle of light, that which is in your physical, mental, emotional, spiritual energy bodies. And of course, be open to receive that, anything from your own higher guidance system. So now, in just this moment, take a few moments, put all of your awareness now on your eyelids. You can relax those eyes so deeply that as long as you choose not to remove that relaxation, the eyelids won't work. So have those tiny little muscles in your eyelids that open your eyes, have them be so relaxed that they won't open your eyes. And notice what that feels like, and notice where that level of relaxation is. And now let's put that whole level of relaxation at the top of your head, and letting the top of your head, just letting this wave of relaxation slide all the way down from the top of your head, down to the tip of your toes and your fingers. And now we're going to deepen it even more, because I'm going to ask you to, in a few moments, I'll say open your eyes, and then I'll say close your eyes. And when you close your eyes, just send another wave of relaxation through your body. So very quickly that you will allow this physical part of you to relax twice as deep, letting your mind grow twice as blank and still and quiet. All right, now let your eyes now become open, and now close them. And way, way down, really let go. Feel that body relax much, much more. And I'm going to play the tone. Follow this tone into the silence. As you follow the tone into the silence, allow that to enable you to let go of any residual tension in the body, letting your mind become more and more like a still, calm, serene lake, or like a blank canvas. All thoughts of future fade away, and all thoughts of past disappear as you allow yourself to rest, to bask in this eternal present moment of now. Because when the focus and attention is solidly anchored in this now time, that is when insights and wisdom and clarity can drop in from your own higher guidance system. So now see yourself, feel yourself now walking down a hallway, seeing a door. You open the door and you move into an outdoor scene, a scene in which you know very well a scene in which you really like and enjoy, and you take in the smells and the sounds, and this can be a place where you've been many times before, or can just be a place in your mind's eye that you're just creating, an outdoor scene, taking in the smells and the sounds, feeling the temperature of the air and the skin. And now in a few moments I'm going to play the tone, and when you hear the sound of the tone, that'll be a signal for you to drift on up outside of yourself and then look down at yourself from a third person point of view. It'll be as if you're just lifting on up and looking down and seeing yourself down there, enjoying yourself in that really nice, beautiful outdoor scene. 3, 2, and now 1. And you now lift on up and you look down and you can see down there. In your mind's eye, you can see yourself enjoying yourself in that outdoor scene, and you can get an impression. You can see the top of your head down there. And even if you get a vague thought about it, that's perfect. That's good enough. And now you allow your consciousness to lightly and freely begin to drift up higher and higher so that you can look down and see more and more of that outdoor scene. And then as you drift higher still, you begin now to see for hundreds of miles all around. You can't even see your body anymore down there. And then as you drift higher still, you just temporarily, for 10 minutes, you leave behind that body, mind, personality, and instead you more begin to tune into and identify with the light and energy and consciousness that animates the body. You begin now to more identify and tune into that soul self of pure consciousness as you lightly and freely drift higher and higher, so high now that you can see the curvature of the earth. And you now leave the earth's atmosphere, you enter outer space, and you turn around and see that earth getting smaller and smaller as you drift higher and further and deeper into space. And soon now, as you look down, that earth down there looks as though it could be about the size of a tiny little pea. And all of the joys and the sorrows and the chaos of all the human experiences are down there on that earth. And you are peacefully and gently floating above them all. Floating above all 7 billion human dramas and above all 7 billion human biographies. And as you drift higher and higher still, that earth gets smaller, down to the size of a grain of sand, and then it just disappears. And you turn around and you look up and you continue to drift higher, further, deeper into space, away from where that earth was. And you move into a shaft of light now that guides you. In the distance there is a light. This is the light of source energy. This is the light of home in the ultimate sense. And you find yourself drifting closer to that light, and the closer you get towards that light, you feel a growing sense of warmth and peace and well-being. And now you begin to reach the outer reaches of this light, and they now envelope you lovingly and pull you into its center, so that you as this energy being now merge into the very heart and center of this light of source energy, and you just rest here. You simply rest here, and you begin to soak in these high vibrations like a sponge, allowing them to saturate your whole being. And you give the gift of your full presence to this light of source energy, and you allow the light of source energy to give you the gift of its full presence. And you now begin to breathe in and actually feel certain specific qualities of this source energy. And here's where you really become an active participant here. You now breathe in this moment, right into the heart center, that vibration of source, which is deep peace. So in this moment, you now breathe in right into the heart center, that vibration of deep peace. Feeling what that feels like on the exhalation is let it spread now through every cell, molecule, and atom of your being, and all of the space in between. On the inhalation, you breathe in the vibration of peace. On the exhalation, you let it spread through your whole being. You feel what deep peace feels like. You record what deep peace feels like. because we're going to compare that now with a different quality of source energy. And this is the quality of joy. So in this moment, you now breathe in right into the heart center, that vibration of the word joy, right into the heart center on the inhalation, and on the exhalation, letting that vibration of the word joy flood through your whole being, feeling what joy feels like in comparison with the vibration of peace. Now, if you pay very, very close attention, you can actually feel that very subtle difference between the vibration of peace and the vibration of joy. Most people will say that joy feels a little more vibrant and alive. So you let that wash through your being. And now you breathe in a very important quality of source energy, because this is a quality that is not necessarily very easily felt in the human experience, and that is unconditional love and acceptance. So in this moment, you now breathe in that vibration of unconditional love and acceptance on the inhalation, exhalation, letting it flood through your whole energy system, feeling what the warm embrace of that feels like, letting that flood through your whole being. And the final quality that we're going to tune into at this time is pure safety and security, another very real quality of source energy. So you now breathe in that vibration of source energy on the inhalation and the exhalation, just letting it spread through your whole being. And so now you can just relax your focus and just breathe in a combination of all of these qualities of source energy. A combination of deep peace and of joy and of unconditional love and acceptance and pure safety and security. And now, because you are an energy being that comes from this source energy, we're going to take it one step further for just the next few moments. So for the next few moments, just to allow that the boundaries between you and this source energy just begin to melt away, so that you as this energy being just melt into and merge as one for a few moments in this infinite ocean of source energy, as you now expand out to the right into infinity with this tone, and you expand out to the left into eternity, and you expand above you to infinity, and you expand below you to eternity, and you expand in front of you to infinity, and you expand behind you to infinity, and you expand out now on all sides into eternity. So in only this moment, there is no more up, there's no down, no here, no there, no sideways. No time, no space. There's only here, only now, just this oneness. And as you follow the tone into the silence, allow that to enable you to relax deeper and deeper into your own present moment experience of resting in and as this source energy of pure creative potential. Resting in and as this source energy of pure creative potential, just feel the answer to this question. Does it feel in this moment like there's anything in the universe that can harm you? Not if you're fully identified and anchored as this source energy. The truth is there isn't anything that can harm the most authentic, the most permanent part of you. After all, how can oneness be harmed? And so while you're basking in this light of source energy, you look down to where the earth used to be, and instead of the earth being there, there's a line. Duality is now created, you in this line, and you see that this is a timeline of your life. The future is to the right, and the past is to the left, and the present is straight below. And from here, you can look to the future, and you can look to the past, and you look down and you see yourself as this infant, like a 2-month-old infant. And you can ask the question, ideally, should that 2-month-old infant, ideally, should he or she be made, ideally, to feel loved and wanted and valued and safe and secure? Yes, of course. Are they worthy of love? Of course they are, just as all infants in the world are worthy of love. And they are good enough as they are, and they are deserving of success and love in their life. Of course. That's just truth, and we're only concerned with truth here. So as you see yourself now moving above the timeline of your life, any belief of unworthiness that you are not good enough, you picked it up from some situation or circumstance outside of you. It's not, you weren't born with those thoughts and feelings. You picked them up in your programming and conditioning. So right now, in this moment, you can just release that and let it go. Feel what it would feel like to let go of any limiting belief or thought that does not serve you. That doesn't serve you. And as you release that, you replace it with a part of you, a part of your own light that got covered up and lost when you took on that belief or that feeling. Yes, and you get your own light back. And then you can give that light back to any times on that timeline down there that you most needed it. It's like you make a conscious connection from that ego, body, mind, personality throughout your life. You make a conscious connection from your own higher self to them, and you beam into them the truth that, of course, they're worthy of love, and they come from love, and they'll go back to love. And anytime anyone is operating from a feeling of guilt down there, you can let that go. Why? Because we are here in this human experience to learn by trial and error. And that's the only way humans learn, is through trial and error. You didn't come here to beat yourself up. You came here to screw it up royally and make mistakes so you can grow and learn as a body and mind and soul system. So guilt serves no purpose other than keeping you stuck, so you feel what that feels like to let it all go. And you now move over to the right-hand side of this circle of love, this timeline, and you now create that next best, grandest version of yourself. You create a version of yourself now in which your body-mind system is like a clear vessel for the brilliance of your soul self to shine through with unity consciousness. And you create a version down there that can look at other individuals in your family or strangers in the grocery store, and you see their higher soul self. You see the truth of them. You feel the truth of yourself, and you feel yourself with that unity consciousness interacting in the world. And you notice how others will respond to you, and you feel that. And you notice how that feels. And this is the energy that we are going to bring back with you today. So, in a few moments, I'm going to count up from 1 up to 5. When I reach the count of 5, you can allow yourself to emerge, feeling refreshed, alive, alert, feeling better in every way. 1, coming back together, body, mind, and soul, all together as one in your present body. 2, leaving behind any heavy, dense thoughts, feelings, perspectives, fears, beliefs that no longer serve you to carry. Instead, you bring back with you, you replace it with the light, the energy, and consciousness of your own higher self. You bring back with you a renewed connection to your own higher self and of source energy. And now as I count 3, you now begin to feel the full support of the chair beneath your back, beneath the legs, taking deeper breaths into the body as I count 4, feeling the arms and legs in the chair, feeling body in the chair, feeling breath in the body. Breath is the link between the body and this eternal part of you, so from this day forward, as you tune into the breath, you will tune into this eternal free part of you. And now with that, take one more nice, deep, purifying, and cleansing breath. And 5. And wide awake. And welcome back to this dimension. So you can be in the body, and you can also be aware of your connection to everyone and all things at the same time. Namaste. May we awaken from ignorance to wisdom, restlessness to peace, desires to contentment, and may we especially awaken out of egoic identification and identifying with the highest dimension of our being, which is based in love. Om. Peace. Now, men.